We have agreed. You are no longer part of this family. That was the text my mother sent me. Seconds later, my sister Tess hearted the message. I didn't cry. I didn't ask why. I just opened my banking app, found the automatic mortgage payment for their house, and clicked cancel. Before I tell you what they did when the money stopped, drop a comment and let me know where you're listening from and what time it is for you right now. I want to see how far this story travels. To understand why I pressed that button, you have to go back 3 weeks. It was a Sunday, but there was no roast in the oven. My parents' living room smelled like dust and old potpourri. My father, Mr. Joyce, sat in his recliner, looking smaller than I had ever seen him. My mother was perched on the armrest, her hand on his shoulder, like she was posing for a portrait of grief. My older sister, Tess, was on the floor at his feet, weeping into his knee. I sat on the hard wooden chair across from them, my purse still in my lap. I was the audience. It's aggressive, my father said, his voice a raspy whisper. Stage 4. The doctors in Chicago say there's nothing they can do. My mother chimed in, her voice trembling. They gave him 6 months, Hannah. 6 months. Tess let out a fresh wail, clutching Dad's leg tighter. I felt a cold knot tighten in my stomach. I am a CFO. I deal in risk assessment and disaster management. But seeing your father fade away isn't something you can put on a spreadsheet. There is one option, Dad said, looking at me with watery eyes. There's a specialist, Dr. Morales. He's running an experimental immunotherapy clinic just south of the border, in Mexico. Mexico? I asked. It's cutting edge, Mom said quickly. But because it's not FDA approved yet, Blue Cross won't touch it. They denied the claim this morning. How much? I asked. The numbers. I always go to the numbers. $180,000, Dad said. Cash. Up front. To secure a spot on the waiting list. Tess lifted her head, her mascara perfectly smeared. We can't let him die, Hannah. We have to do something. I looked at them. Really looked at them. And that's when my brain, the part of me that audits million-dollar companies for a living, started to whir. Why Mexico? It hit me then. A cold realization that I tried to shove down. The Mexico script is a classic for a reason. It is the perfect narrative black box. If they said he was being treated at Northwestern or Mayo Clinic, I could verify it. I could demand to speak to the billing department. I could look at insurance codes. But Mexico? It's a jurisdiction where American privacy laws don't apply, and American insurance has no visibility. It creates a closed loop, where verification is impossible. If I ask for records, they can say they are in Spanish, or that the clinic is private. It forces me into a corner, where asking for proof makes me look like a monster. They weren't just asking for help. They were weaponizing my fear of being an orphan to bypass my professional skepticism. They knew I couldn't audit a ghost. I don't have $180,000 in cash, I said calmly. My money is tied up in investments. But you have the condo, Mom said. The air left the room. My condo. The one thing I owned that was just mine. The place I bought after my promotion. The sanctuary where I went to escape the noise of this family. You have equity, Mom continued, her eyes hard and bright. Tess doesn't have anything. She's in between opportunities right now. But you, Hannah, you're the successful one. You can sell it. You can get a bridge loan. You want me to sell my home? It's a building, Hannah. Tess screamed, standing up now. This is Dad's life. How can you even hesitate? Are you that selfish? My father looked at me, a single tear tracking through the stubble on his cheek. I don't want to be a burden, Hannah. But I'm not ready to go. The guilt hit me like a physical blow. It was a masterclass in manipulation. They had positioned me as the only thing standing between my father and the grave. If I said no, I wasn't just frugal. I was a killer. I need to think, I said. We don't have time to think, Tess yelled. He needs that surgery next week. I'll figure it out, I whispered. I'll save him. My mother smiled then. It was a small, tight smile. I knew you would. You're the good daughter. I walked out of that house feeling like I was carrying the weight of the world. But as I drove away, the fog of guilt started to lift, and the math started to nag at me. I drove home in silence, the radio off, the windows up. The guilt was still there, a heavy stone in my chest. But my mind kept snagging on a glitch. It was the number. 180,000. In my line of work, round numbers are red flags. Nature isn't round. Medical bills definitely aren't round. They are messy. Specific things with cents and administrative fees. $180,000 wasn't a medical quote. It was a budget cap. And then there was Tess. I replayed the scene in my head as I unlocked my apartment door. When Dad said the number, Tess didn't wail louder. She went still. Her breathing hitched. Not in sorrow, but in anticipation. It was a micro-expression I'd seen a dozen times across boardroom tables when a CEO is trying to hide a deficit. It wasn't the panic of a grieving daughter. It was the tension of a gambler waiting to see if the bet paid off. I tossed my keys on the counter. I didn't call a real estate agent. I didn't look up bridge loans. Instead, I sat down at my desk and opened my laptop. I treated my family exactly like I would treat a failing subsidiary. I initiated a forensic audit. I didn't need a high-priced private investigator to tail them. I didn't need to hack their phones. People think their darkest secrets are locked in safes or buried in backyards. But in America, your secrets are usually just filed in a database that anyone with an internet connection and $20 can access. I navigated to the Cook County Civil Court portal. It is public domain, fully searchable, and absolutely ruthless. If you are being sued, evicted, or divorced, it's here. My fingers hovered over the keyboard. Part of me, the daughter part, the part that wanted to believe my father was a hero and my sister was just unlucky, wanted to close the laptop. I wanted to sell the condo, pay the money, and be the savior. I wanted the hug my mother gave me to be real. But the CFO part of me knew better. Trust is a liability. Verification is an asset. I typed Tess Joyce into the defendant search field. I hit enter. The screen refreshed. I expected to see nothing. Maybe a parking ticket or a small claims dispute from an old landlord. I expected to feel relieved. To feel like a paranoid, cynical woman who owed her dying father an apology. I didn't see nothing. The search results populated a list. And right at the top, filed just 4 days ago, was a fresh case number. Case number 24L008920. Plaintiff. Apex Logistics. Defendant. Tess Joyce. Cause of action. Civil conversion and breach of contract. I stared at the glowing pixels until they burned into my retinas. Civil conversion. In the corporate world, that is the polite legal term for theft. I clicked on the complaint PDF. I didn't need to read the whole thing. I just needed the summary. Tess hadn't been let go due to restructuring, as she'd claimed 3 months ago. She had been caught diverting vendor payments into a personal shell account. Apex Logistics wasn't pressing criminal charges yet. They had filed a civil suit first, offering a settlement window. The demand for judgment was right there at the bottom, bold and black. $180,000. The room spun. There was no Dr. Morales. There was no immunotherapy. There was just a deadline to keep my sister out of prison. My phone rang, shattering the silence. The screen lit up with Mom. I stared at it. My thumb hovered over the decline button. But old habits die hard. Fear is a reflex. I answered. Hannah. My mother's voice was a jagged shriek. He's coughing up blood. Oh God, there's so much blood. Background noise. Chaos. Tess sobbing. Daddy, stay with us. My father making wet, hacking sounds. I'm calling 911, I stammered, my hand flying to my mouth. No, Mom screamed. No hospitals. They'll just drug him and let him die. We need to get him to the car. We need to drive south tonight. Do you have the money? Tell me you sold the condo, Hannah. Tell me you didn't let your father down. For a split second, I wavered. The sounds were so visceral. The panic in my mother's voice felt real. What if I was wrong? What if the lawsuit and the cancer were a horrific coincidence? What if my cynicism was about to kill my father? I felt the bile rise in my throat. I was about to capitulate. I was about to say, yes, take it. Take everything. Then I looked back at the screen. I looked at the filing date on the lawsuit. October 14th. Last Friday. Then I looked at the date on my calendar. The family emergency meeting had been Sunday, October 16th. They didn't call me when Dad got sick. They called me 48 hours after Tess got served. The sounds on the phone, the coughing, the weeping suddenly sounded different. They sounded like a performance. A desperate, improvisational theater piece designed to extract maximum liquidity from the family asset. And that's what I was to them. I wasn't a daughter. I was an asset. An insurance policy they could cash out when their golden child crashed her car. I looked at my apartment walls. I had worked 80-hour weeks for this place. I had missed birthdays, holidays, and dates to build this security. And they were asking me to burn it down. They were asking me to set my future on fire just to keep Tess warm. It wasn't a request for help. It was a demand for a human sacrifice. They had weighed my life against Tess's freedom, and the scale hadn't even tipped. Hannah? Mom demanded. Answer me. My voice went cold. The daughter died in that moment. The CFO took over. I'm working on the liquidity, I said, my voice flat. But the bank needs 48 hours to clear a sum that large. We don't have 48 hours. Then you better hope he holds on, I said. I'll call you when the funds clear. I hung up. I didn't call the bank. I called a mobile notary I used for corporate contract signings. Then I opened a fresh document and started typing up a quitclaim deed. If they wanted to play a game of high-stakes finance, fine. But they forgot one thing. I write the contracts. 2 days later, I stood in my parents' living room again. The atmosphere had shifted from panic to a suffocating, expectant silence. My father was lying on the sofa this time, an Afghan pulled up to his chin, offering a weak, trembling wave. It was a nice touch. If I didn't know better, I would have checked his pulse. Tess was pacing by the window, her phone in her hand. She looked exhausted, but not from grief. She looked like someone waiting for a wire transfer to clear before the repo man arrived. Do you have it? Mom asked. She didn't say hello. She didn't ask how I was. She went straight to the liquidity. I have the funds, I said, setting my briefcase on the coffee table. The sound of the heavy leather hitting the wood made them all jump. But we have a compliance issue. Compliance? Tess snapped. Dad is dying, Hannah. Who cares about compliance? The IRS cares, I said, keeping my voice level. If I transfer $180,000 to you, it triggers a gift tax event. The government will take 40%. That leaves you with barely enough to pay the clinic. I watched their faces. Panic flared. They didn't know tax law, but they knew greed. The idea of the government taking a slice of their windfall was more terrifying to them than the cancer itself. So what do we do? Dad wheezed from the couch. I spoke to my tax attorney, I lied. There is a loophole. I can't give you the money, but I can make a distressed asset investment. If I buy this house from you for the exact amount of the medical bills, I can write the entire sum off as a capital loss on my corporate taxes. Mom narrowed her eyes. Buy the house? You want our house? Technically, I said. On paper. I hold the deed for 1 fiscal year to satisfy the audit period. Then, once the write-off clears, I sell it back to you for $1. I pulled a document from my briefcase. It was the quitclaim deed I had drafted, listing the sale price as $180,000. It's a paper shuffle, Mom. It keeps the IRS out of my accounts and gets Dad his surgery money tax-free. Or, I can write a check now, and you can explain to the feds why you owe them $70,000 next April. They exchanged glances. I could see the gears turning. They thought I was doing exactly what they would do. Cheating the system. It made sense to them. It aligned with their worldview that everyone is running a scam. They didn't see a trap. They saw a kindred spirit. And you'll sell it back? Dad asked. In writing? It's in the addendum, I said, pointing to a clause I had buried on page 4. It was a standard option to purchase clause, completely unenforceable if the primary terms of the sale, the medical necessity, were proven fraudulent. But they didn't read contracts. They just looked for the exit. Fine, Mom said. Let's do it. Good, I said. I brought a witness. I opened the front door and signaled to the car waiting in the driveway. Brenda, a mobile notary I used for corporate mergers, stepped out. She walked in, brisk and professional, her stamp already in hand. There was no ceremony. No reading of the fine print. Mom and Dad signed the deed on the coffee table, right next to Dad's sickbed. Brenda stamped it with a heavy, satisfying thud. In that moment, the house they had held over my head for years. The house where I was always the guest, never the resident, ceased to be theirs. Okay, Mom said, practically shoving the papers at me. Send the money. Laptop, I said. I'll do it right now. I sat down and opened my computer. The deed was in my bag. The trap was set. Now, it was time to close the steel jaws. I opened my laptop on the coffee table, the blue light casting long, sharp shadows across my parents' anxious faces. The air in the room was thick, smelling of stale coffee and desperation. Brenda, the notary, was already packing up her seal, a silent witness to the transfer of a lifetime of equity for a lie. The deed is recorded, I said, my voice flat. Now for the liquidity. Just send it, Hannah, Tess hissed, vibrating with impatience. The clinic closes their intake at 5. Not yet, I said. I pulled my phone from my pocket and set it on the table, face up. I opened the voice memo app and hit the big red button. This is a 6-figure transaction between family members. If I get audited, I need proof this isn't a gift. The IRS doesn't take my sister promised as a deduction. My mother bristled. You're recording us? Standard compliance. I lied smoothly. State your names and the purpose of these funds. Then I pressed send. They exchanged a look. It was the look of people who were used to getting their way without paperwork, but who were smart enough to know when they were cornered. I'm Cynthia Joyce, my mother said, leaning toward the phone. And this is for Stephen Joyce. And the purpose? I prompted. My mother looked me dead in the eye. She didn't blink. She didn't hesitate. It is for life-saving experimental cancer surgery for Stephen Joyce at the Morales Clinic in Mexico. And you confirm there is no other use for these funds? It is for the surgery. Dad croaked from the couch, playing his part to the bitter end. To save my life. I stopped the recording. That was it. They had just committed wire fraud on tape, soliciting money across state lines under false pretenses. This wasn't just a lie anymore. It was a federal crime. I logged into my banking portal. My parents only watched the amount $180,000. They didn't see me enter Apex Logistics instead of a clinic. In the memo, I wrote, restitution for Tess Joyce. Case 8,920 full settlement. I wasn't paying for cancer. I was paying my sister's debt, buying her freedom with their house. I clicked, authorize transfer. 3 seconds. Then, transaction. Successful. They celebrated. They hugged. No one thanked me. I left. 2 weeks later, I came back not as a daughter, but as a landlord. At the miracle remission party, I airplayed the wire receipt to the TV. Then Stephen Joyce's medical record. Clean bill of health. No cancer. No oncology visits in 5 years. I told them the truth. I paid Tess's debt. The lawsuit was dropped, and they had signed the house over to me. Kevin, the process server, walked in. 30-day notice to vacate. They exploded. Threats. Accusations. Then I played the recording. We have to say it's cancer or Hannah won't pay. Their voices. Their lie. I showed them the IRS fraud referral form. Fight me. And I send it. Wire fraud. Tax fraud. Federal prison. They went silent. I walked out. 6 weeks later, I sold the house and donated every dollar to legal aid for financial abuse victims. I kept my job. I kept my freedom. For the first time in my life, my ledger was balanced.